this is Gryffindor, aka Griff, and this is his roadmap to success. The primary two issues that Gryffindor's guardian wants to help with is marking and barking. They sound the same, but are very different. Now, the barking is probably a territorial thing or alerting thing. This only works for about 10% of dogs, but for some dogs, when they're barking, they're saying, somebody's here, somebody's here, somebody's here, somebody's here. Why did somebody listen to me? Somebody's here, somebody's here. Somebody's just saying, thanks, Griff. Whew, she finally heard me. Can work. Is that what you're saying? If it doesn't work, then a lot of it is, again, territorial or thinking that his job to be the security bouncing dog. So we went over a number of rules that we can incorporate to help him start to identify like a follower. We're not going to use dominance theory or anything aggressive. We're just going to apply consequences. So, for example, if he's barking at me and I'm in the room, I might get up and leave the room and close the door behind me. So that's called, well, basically what we're doing is just I'm subtracting myself from the situation. He really likes his guardian. So if he barks and she suddenly leaves, and we do it within that 3-second window, then after we do that consistently enough times, he's like, when I bark, she leaves. I don't want her to leave, so I'm going to not bark. Now, a lot of it comes from thinking that it's his job to be in charge of security. So the more that we enforce rules and boundaries and limits consistently, then that structure can help him start to self-identify as being in more of the follower position. Followers take the lead from the leaders. But if he's in the middle of barking and we're yelling at him to stop, he's not, and he still thinks it's his job, he's going to ignore it and just keep right on doing it. So some of the rules we incorporated were not being allowed on the furniture for at least 30 days, or as long as the problems are still going on. As long as he's marking, I would not allow him on the furniture. Once that's the case, once he stopped marking, then we can invite him on the furniture with an invitation and only for good behavior. So if he's up here and starts growling or barking, he has to immediately get down. If he jumps up without my permission, I turn and say, off, one time. If he doesn't get off, I'm either going to grab him by his collar or his vest or put my hand behind his butt and push him firmly to the edge, but not all the way off. I always want the dog to do the work. I want him to feel like he's going to fall off, so he jumps off on his own. Other rules would be having to sit before the human lets me in or out of a door. Not being allowed to be within 7 feet of any human who are eating food. Humans are eating food, or be within 7 feet of another dog who's eating a food. Making him sit and wait at the stairs. So instead of being able to run up the stairs ahead of the guardian saying, I'm the leader, because for dogs, whoever's in front is the leadership position, we're going to teach him to stay at the bottom of the stairs, the human goes to the top of the stairs, and then calls him up there. After we do this enough, he'll just sit there and wait on his own, and that's him developing self-control and developing the ability to restrain himself in other more complicated situations. Let's see, I want the guardians to start practicing what I call petting with a purpose. Instead of petting the dog, one of the guardians pets the dog to such an extent he really doesn't even seek it out anymore. He gets it so much. And I read a case study, and I mentioned this with the guardian, with a Siberian Husky, I think, that was marking in the house, and it was just getting petted to death. So they said no more petting unless the dog earns it first. So the dog should have to sit, lay down, or come to us before we pet it. Now, when a dog feels good about itself, its nose is parallel to the ground and tilted upward. So whenever possible, if I'm going to pet him, I'm going to try to pet him under his chin to facilitate that nose-up orientation. I want him to feel good about doing what I call desired behaviors, sitting, laying down, and coming. I'd also like the guardians to help each other out. So if one of the guardians comes in the room and sees that we're petting him and he's standing up, we say paycheck. The other guardian's petting him, stops petting, and says sit. When he sits, we pet him and say sit. Just the word sit, not good dog, not good sit, just sit. And not sit, just sit. And then we can turn and tell our partner, actually I asked him to sit before he came in the room. He got up when he came in. He heard you walking in. David said I'm allowed to continue petting, which I am. But he just has to earn his attention. After a while, he's going to start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for his attention. And of course, we can pet him at that point. But if we want to pet him just because he looks cute, just tell him to sit or lay down. As soon as he does, pet him. And then you can pet him for an hour after that. But no petting for no reason. I also like the guardians to practice passive training. So every time he comes to us, we're going to pet him and say, come. Every time he lays down on his own, we're going to pet him and say, down, or whatever the command word is. Every time he sits, we pet him and say, sit. The more we do this in different locations, the easier it is for him to sit in other more complicated situations. And it also introduces the concept, I can't tell the humans what to do, but if they tell me what to do and I do it, I'm rewarded. So we're not punishing him, we're not doing anything negative, we're just putting him in a position where he does the things we want. We are rewarding and reinforcing those. The more that happens, the more that he's willing or looking forward to engaging in those same desired behaviors and actions. I'd also like the guardians to use the escalating consequences we talked about. So the very first thing we're going to do is make a hissing sound like this. He's a little bit tired right now, but make sure you create the right intensity. So if he's at level 5, I need to match my hiss at level 5 or level 6, meet him or slightly exceed, otherwise he won't listen to it. I'm only going to hiss once per incident, and I'm going to hiss before the dog does the wrong thing. So if he comes, he's about to jump on the couch, but he's still a foot away, that's where I would hiss with the right intensity. Second thing we do is we abruptly stand up. Remember, when you stand up, that's the most authoritative position you can be in for your dog. Your authority goes whichever direction your hips and your shoulders are pointing. Yes, I know it's tough, but we need you on camera just for another minute or two. When you stand up abruptly and keep on pivoting without moving your feet. Keep him in front of your hips until he's stationary. As soon as he's stationary, take 2 steps back, left, right only, and then stop. Then you can go back to doing what you're doing. That's the second consequence. The third escalating consequence is to march directly at the dog until he turns sideways to you or greater. As soon as he turns sideways, we stop in place. Then we go to the second consequence. We pivot our hips, I know, buddy, until the dog is stationary, and then we take those 2 steps backwards. Make sure you take the 2 steps backwards as soon as that dog is stationary, because that's a conversation. If you wait too long, he doesn't know what it is you're asking from him. Now, the only time I would not stop when he turns sideways is if he's in a designated no dog zone. So if I'm eating a snack here, he shouldn't be within 7 feet of me. If he comes and he approaches me, gets within a foot, and I stand up and march at him and he turns sideways immediately, he's only 3 feet away from me, he's still in the no dog zone. So I keep on marching at him until he got to the 7-foot line, and that's where I would stop. That's how I would establish an artificial boundary. I'd like the guardian to do that with him in a couple of areas. Like we have a sunroom in the back of the house. I'd like the guardian to put him in there, tell him to wait, and then step through the doorway and into the kitchen, and make him wait a certain period of time, and then we go back to him and give him permission to come in. Next time we do it, we move a couple steps further away and wait a little bit longer. Eventually, we get to the point where we're far enough away where we can take 1 step to the side and be out of his line of sight. When we do that, we take 1 step, we wait a count of 1 and come back, and then go back to him, and then give him the command to come. Next time we do it, we'd be out of sight for 2 seconds, then for 4 seconds. Now, I'm guesstimating the length of time. It's going to be based on what is appropriate for him. If you go from 2 seconds to 4 seconds, and at 3 seconds he gets up and starts coming through the doorway, then I would go from 2 seconds to 3 seconds to 4 seconds to 5. Always back up a step and go at the dog's pace. Whenever possible, end on a good note. So, well, not whenever possible, that should be your goal. We want him to have a fond remembrance of whatever it was that we were doing. Not, I got corrected last time we did that. I'd like the guardians to get in the habit of not moving around the dog. Instead, if the dog is in our way, we're going to walk through the dog. The dog's going to need to learn to defer and get out of our way. And we don't want to hurt the dog, but if we're too ginger in our movements or move around too much, that's one of the reasons that he thinks that he's in charge, is because one of the humans moves around him, rather than communicating to him that he needs to move out of their way. Let's see, what else? We'd like we talked about practicing on the stairs. Also like to practice the door exercise at the front door. So we might have to arrange some chairs on the side because we have a great open floor plan, but it makes it easy for the dog to go around us. Remember, the first thing we're going to do is move the dog back behind the line. Then we're going to stop, take 1 step backwards, pause. When I say 1 step, I mean left foot, right foot, stop. Pause just a quarter of a second, then take another step backwards, and keep on moving back until you can get to the door. Then we're going to break down answering the door into individual steps, as I covered in the other video. On walks, the dog should walk through the door after the human, not before the human. We can also use the counter conditioning technique that we went over earlier. Now, he's pooped. I don't think he's going to be interested in this. Nope. Well, these are the tricky trainers, the soft liver flavored. So what we can do is, if he's barking at kids outside of the store that he goes to, that his guardian owns, what we can do is we can squeeze one of these, make sure it's nice and soft, and then let him chew on it while he's looking at the kids through the doorway. Now, if you put the treat in front of him and he goes like this, he's saying that they're too close or it's too intense. So I would back him up a little bit away, or arrange to hire some kids yourself and have them a little bit further away from your doorstop, so you can get him to look at the kids and chew the treat at the same time. We can also use the counter conditioning technique like for knocking on the door. Normally he goes nuts when we knock at the door, but what we did is we let him chew on the treat, and then we had a code word. Every time we said the code word, somebody would knock on the door. Now, because we were delivering the high value reinforcer first, he starts to create a positive association. Door knock means I get tasty treat. I like door knock. And then he stops barking like he was. I'd like the guardian to also start feeding the dog after she eats something first. Just something you have 5 or more bites. It can't be a smoothie or coffee. They don't understand liquids as a food item. So grab a chip or a cracker, just eat it in 5 or more bites and give the dog permission to eat. That helps the dog see the human in the eating in a more of a leadership position. It's been 2 sessions. For some reason today, after a long weekend, I'm a little bit punchy. Okay, that is the roadmap to success for Gryffindor. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.